I'm smiling because I finally did something about my boss who steals my ideas.
This is the last time that bastard cheats on me.
Thousands of happy customers have rid themselves of annoying colleagues, unpleasant lovers or neighbors, or just sped up karma a bit with Sinister Minute's patented voodoo dolls. Just poke in a pin, chant the words, and let that juju rip. Available in Goth Black and Slasher Red. Sinister Minute's voodoo dolls. Put a pin in it! Pins sold separately. Frequent use may result in clang sounds at your door, the feeling of constantly being watched, darting shadows. Got a minute or two? We have a way to make it not okay. Welcome to Sinister Minutes. I'm your host, writer and storyteller Kurt Homan. Next to me is the master of macabre musical musings, the maestro of mood, Tim Parker. Together, let us take you on a journey into the dark heart of disturbing. Sinister Minutes. It's not okay. Sinister Minutes features tales that include disturbing content. That's intentional because, like the podcast itself, the creators here at Sinister Minutes are really not okay. Now, having said that, realize that content featured on this podcast may include descriptions of some pretty horrific things at times. It is a dark fiction podcast, after all. So we hope that you are anticipating some degree of abuse and blood, of harm and death, of suicide, of sex, of injury, of mutilation, of pain, and certainly some profanity. Maybe a little bit of screaming, occasionally some threats, a bit of torture, a bit of victim blaming. And as always, at some point, we're sure that you're going to encounter some witches. Don't say we didn't warn you. Welcome to the first episode of Sinister Minutes, Season 2. Some of you have been with us now for an entire year, and we can't tell you how much that means to us. Others might be joining us for the first time today, and we'd love to have you go back and listen to the last year's worth of episodes. There's a ton of great stories in there, and we think it'll enrich your life and anything you're doing if you just let your Sinister Minutes crew entertain you in the background. Today's tale is Heart of Fire, in which we bring a bit of fantasy genre to the forefront. There's a dragon, you see, and perhaps a bit of hoarded treasure. We skipped over the knight in shining armor, but, well, how would you react if you woke up one night to find a giant dragon cramped into your room with you, unable to stretch without sinking its talons into everything, unable to yawn without incinerating the entire building? If you've got an idea what you'd do, please let us know. You can find Sinister Minutes on Blue Sky and YouTube and Facebook, or you could drop us an email. Speaking of which, do you have an original short story of your own? Something you'd like to hear narrated on a future Sinister Minutes episode? Go ahead and attach it to an email. Send it to sinisterminutes@gmail.com and we'll dive right in. Go ahead. You know you want to. Hey, after today's story, Tim's got some new music for you called Graveyard Procession. We here at Sinister Minutes can't think of a more fun kind of parade, so look for us near the back, throwing beads and candy and Well, what do you think we'd be throwing? I mean, considering that by now you know we're not okay. Heart of Fire, written and narrated by Kurt Hellman. The large reptilian eye, shining golden in the dim light, held her in its stare. Weaponless, alone, clothed only in a nightgown, she needed to stay focused. LaBelle crept backwards. Any sudden movement could be fatal. She'd spent a lifetime eluding its massive jaws, its razor-sharp talons, its fiery breath. Youth had once provided her speed and dexterity to escape. Age left only her wits, and now even those seemed feeble. When she felt the wall against her back, she crept to the side, searching for an exit. She'd spent hours, days in that room, but the presence of the dragon made her forget what was where. So she slid, hands at her sides, shoulders feeling the dry, hard ripples in the plaster through the thin flannel nightgown. She shivered as a trickle of sweat ran down her spine. The dragon's gaze never left LaBelle's face. She tried to guess its size in the dark, tried to tell where darkness ended and dragon began. It seemed to occupy every bit of space in the room that she did not. She never saw it come inside. It always just appeared. A creature that size could not have entered through the single door, even if it had somehow managed to get to that door without being seen. It certainly could not have squeezed through the grill on the window. LaBelle had tried that herself. The gaps were far too small. How it had gotten in was less vital than getting herself out. She continued feeling her way along the wall until it gave way to the door frame, and then the cool metal of the door itself. She reached gingerly for the handle, never turning her back on the dragon. She'd always managed to elude it by slipping out of whatever space they shared before it could... Locked. The deep vibration of its respiration resonated through the floor and walls, as though the entire room slowly breathed. The aroma was not unlike charcoal smoldering at a summer picnic, awaiting the first drops from a bloody steak to fall and sizzle. The eye remained unblinking, unwavering in its focus. She had to risk making a move. A sound. Alert someone to open the door. Release her before the dragon consumed her. Eyes squeezed shut, she raised one hand and smacked the door. The sound vibrated through the wall. Certainly the dragon was moving in for the kill. She smacked the door again and again, losing control and raising a torrent of blows on it. Hot breath caressed her cheek. She would not open her eyes. Over. It was all over. The door shifted. Cool, fresh air from outside rushed in, and she fell backwards in her haste to escape. Dr. Kozlowski's office epitomized the lack of imagination and drab melancholy ubiquitous to institutional buildings. Cheap paneling on two of the walls failed to draw attention away from the depressing beige reflected by the other two. Aside from a diploma from a no-name school and a smattering of old awards clinging to the wall behind his desk, it would be impossible to tell this room was ever occupied. LaBelle hated the office. She hated the paneling and the drab paint, hated the dented steel desk and the lumpy torn chairs, but most of all, she hated Dr. Kozlowski. She'd spent countless hours there in her years at the facility, hours filled with pointless questions from the bespectacled fool who sat across the desk, a man too incompetent to practice anywhere, one called Dr. Do-Little-or-Nothing behind his back. He had nonetheless managed to hold on to this job. just her luck. From his balding head to his poorly trimmed goatee, his face had haunted her almost daily from the time she had been committed. "Ah, LaBelle," he steepled his fingers under his chin. "I understand you had another incident last night. I thought we were making some progress, but, well, care to tell me what happened?" "Do we really have to go through this?" she began. "I tell you what happened, you don't believe a word of it, and then we go in circles for an hour. Wouldn't it be easier if you just tell me what you want me to say? I'll say it, and we can both get on with our lives?" "You know it doesn't work that way." He leaned forward. "I can't help your delusions by simply feeding you responses now, can I?" "Never helped anybody with anything." She decided not to voice that thought, and instead gave him time to begin his standard speech. He didn't disappoint. "Let's start with what you think happened. Perhaps we can make some headway from that. Or if you wish, we can continue with the attitude, and we'll get nowhere. Which would you prefer?" She sighed, resigned to the never-ending game. "Okay, fine. It was the dragon. Again. I was lying awake in bed when I felt it in the room. I looked up and there it was, staring at me. I snuck over to the door to escape, but some asshole had locked me in. What the hell was I supposed to do? I'm lucky I got out with my life." Dr. Kozlowski cocked his head and raised one eyebrow. Across the desk, LaBelle took a deep breath, swallowing the fire threatening to rise inside her every time she saw that condescending look. "First, I arranged to have your door locked," he said. "I'll not have you wandering around in the middle of the night, frightening the other residents again. Second, the nurse checked your room after sedating you. There was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. Now, why do you suppose no one ever sees this dragon besides you?" "I suppose, Doctor, that it only comes for me. I've always known that. Once I'm out of the room, it has no reason to remain, so it goes back to wait for another chance." "Where do you think it goes back to? How does it get in and out of your room so quickly, so quietly? Why doesn't it follow you out?" "I don't know. But then I've never been a dragon." LaBelle sat back and crossed her arms. "Maybe you should ask one yourself. I'm sure the conversation would be a lot more interesting than this one." He took off his glasses and sat forward, a sure sign he was about to change tactics. "What were you thinking about when the dragon appeared? Try to remember as much detail as possible." Paranoid delusions brought on by the stress of reliving difficult situations," she said. "Do you seriously think I haven't considered that? Do you honestly believe, for as long as this has been going on, that I haven't tried to eliminate all the pop psychology theories myself?" She shook her head. How had this buffoon gotten his degree to practice medicine in the first place? Dr. Kozlowski closed his eyes and leaned forward, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You know, LaBelle," he looked up at last, "as long as you continue treating me like the enemy, you're never going to get better." The last remnants of snow had all but vanished, leaving only small piles of blackish slush along with the smell of mud and decaying leaves. A light, cold drizzle fell. The day fit LaBelle's mood. She stood alone in the center of the yard. The rest of the residents, no doubt, either gathered indoors around the television or lost in their own minds. "I'm even too crazy for the rest of the crazies," she said to the gray skies. Closing her eyes, she let the cold water trickle through her hair and down her face from where it dripped and soaked into her sweatshirt. Kozlovsky had ended the session at precisely the allocated 50 minutes. In the end, like always, he'd waved her away without so much as a final word. The session had brought them no closer to anything resembling a resolution, and they both knew it. LaBelle thought of the other residents in the waiting room with a mixture of disgust and pity. Disgust at the shells of humanity that she coexisted with, pity at the fact that their only hope of salvation lay in the hands of such an incompetent fool. Her eyes flew open when a familiar charcoal smell hit her senses. The dragon had never before come to her except within a darkened room late at night. In daylight, she saw it clearly for the first time. It was massive, monstrous. She had a flash of memory from another lifetime, of an elephant she'd ridden as a little girl at the fair. This dragon might have carried that beast off. Shimmering scales, 1,000 massive emerald sequins covered its hide. A thick, muscular tail curled behind it, the tip flicking from side to side like that of a restless cat. Its neck was almost as long as the tail, and the head at the end revealed pointed features, sharp ridges along the forehead, and small horns emerging atop the skull. The huge golden eyes, the only part she had ever seen clearly before, stared at her. Wisps of smoke curled from its nostrils as it exhaled. Its mouth was closed, but LaBelle knew within it were row upon row of sharp teeth, teeth that could rend flesh from bone in a heartbeat. Great wings lay folded across its back, like those of a bird resting after a long flight. LaBelle could not imagine how wide they might spread if the beast chose to take flight. The legs were short for its body, but muscular, and it crouched like a cat about to spring. The feet consisted of long, finger-like toes, each of which ended in a razor-sharp talon. Trembling in its presence, her first instinct was to run away. This time she had no darkness to wrap herself in, no retreat from the terrible presence before her. "Help me!" What was meant to be a scream came out as little more than a whimper. Her mind raced, seeking some form of escape from the huge beast. A deep voice rumbled nearby.
What do you need?
"Who's there?" Her voice found strength and volume. "Run! Get help!"
Why do you fear?
"Don't you see it?" She didn't dare take her eyes away from the dragon. "It's big as a house." The dragon's great head, glistening in the mist, turned from side to side, then gazed directly at her once more, the golden glow in its eyes even more intense than before. The voice thundered in her head.
Do you not know me?
Realization slammed her to her knees. "What do you want?" The dragon never took its eyes from her shuddering form.
What do you want?
What did she want? Still images of a lifetime played out across her mind. The odd little girl whose insistence on seeing a dragon meant having no friends. The family who mocked her. The awkward adolescent who learned to say nothing to anyone. The woman who'd spent too many years of her adult life in an institution. She rose to her feet, extended both arms high in the air, and gave a double bird salute. "Fuck off!"
I do not understand.
"You don't understand?" Fists clenched, her arms dropped to her sides. "All my life I've hidden from you." She gestured at the tall fence. "I'm a prisoner because I'm the only one who can see you, so they all think I'm nuts." She barked out a laugh. "You, who brought me nothing but suffering, don't understand." The unblinking eyes showed no reaction.
Pain is all you feel.
"You monster!" she said through gritted teeth. If you're not here to kill me, then what? Do I get to steal your hoarded gold? Or maybe I get a wish. Something to make my world all happily ever after. She spat at the ground. Standing in the cold rain, she shouted at a dragon that nobody else could see. Why are you suddenly talking to me? Have I just hit a new level of crazy?
It is time.
The dragon's wings shifted.
Do you not wish for freedom?
I wish to be free of you. Either leave me alone or kill me.
There is another choice.
LaBelle clenched her fists. What other choice?
Give yourself to me. See the world through dragon eyes. Watch history unfold beneath your wings. Soar across the heavens.
And you're just giving this to me? LaBelle narrowed her gaze. What do I have to give in return? The dragon flicked the tip of its tail.
Your consciousness becomes a part of me.
So you'd kill me?
No, but you will no longer inhabit that body.
LaBelle looked down, her sweatshirt, pants, and sneakers all soaked through, the chill making her shudder. So if I don't take your offer, I get to live out my life in this body until it gives out. Maybe a year from now, or 20 years, I wake up in heaven, or hell. She turned and looked back at the drab building behind her. Never mind, I'm already there. Maybe I just blink out. She pushed wet strands of hair away from her face. If I do what you're suggesting, my body's gone today, but I'm guaranteed a ride on a dragon.
Not a ride. You will be part of a dragon.
LaBelle smiled. I sure as hell don't want to spend any more time in this dump. Let's go. She closed her eyes and faced the beast. I give myself to you. The cold rain warmed, and the world exploded with new colors, new smells, new sensations. LaBelle stared as her body, the one she'd seen every day in the mirror for a lifetime, crumpled to the ground. A sense of power surged through her, and a strange sense she immediately recognized as wings stretched behind her. I am an all-powerful dragon, she said. That's not entirely true, said a woman's voice. Who said that? Said LaBelle.
To be correct, said a man, you should say that we are an all-powerful dragon.
We? What do you mean? Who are you? More voices arose. We are the dragon. Realization emerged for LaBelle. How many are you?
Hundreds.
Thousands. She shook her head, but nothing happened. Tried to raise a hand to her face, but she no longer possessed a head nor a hand of her own. An unfamiliar sensation in her back told of great wings in motion, but she had no control, nor of the vertigo from the sight of the institution now far below. To the voices now sharing her head, she said, You all gave yourselves freely to the dragon? Body and soul?
Human bodies are not useful.
Only souls.
This dragon doesn't hoard gold.
Only souls. But what, cried LaBelle, can a single soul do within a dragon? All any of us can try to do is be heard. Try to convince the dragon. Trapped again. Powerless. One of many. She had traded one prison for another. Or had she? LaBelle's consciousness, floating amongst a legion of others within a great emerald-scaled beast, pulled on a lifetime of amateur psychology in an effort to convince a dragon that a certain Dr. Kozlowski might provide for a most interesting conversation. Graveyard Procession, composed and performed by Tim Parker. Sinister Minutes is presented by Kurt Homan and Tim Parker. The musical score was composed and performed by Tim Parker. Our production team consists of Kurt Homan and Tim Parker. On behalf of everyone here at the Sinister Minutes podcast, namely Kurt Homan and Tim Parker, we thank you for listening, for joining us as we explore all the ways in which we are not okay. This audio program is copyright by Kurt Homan and Tim Parker under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.